Greetings, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to CALDWays 2022. My name's Brett DeHoot, and once again, it is my pleasure to act as your MC. Now, of course, we are all probably where we live, possibly where we work, or somewhere else besides. But I'm here in Melbourne on Wurundjeri land belonging to the people of the Kulin Nations, and I would like to acknowledge them as the traditional owners of the land from where I join all of us. And no matter where you're from, and we have people from every state and every territory across this big brown land, Multicultural Aged Care South Australia, Men's Shed in WA, the Hornsby Shire Council in New South Wales, the Darling Downs and West Moreton PHN in Queensland, volunteering Tasmania, you get the idea. No matter where you're from, however you are joining us, you are, of course, on Aboriginal land. And we wish, of course, as the organisers and I as the MC, to acknowledge that. We're also going to talk a little bit later about the Uluru Statement from the heart and how you can enact localised versions of it in your service. Now, a very special warm welcome as well to any Indigenous or First Nations people who are joining us this morning. Whoever you are, wherever you're from, however you come to be here, I guarantee you're in the right place. Probably. It is the internet, which is a big place, but you're in the right place. Now, look, this morning we have got, well, today, so much to talk about. And of course, it would be nice to talk about it in person, face to face, you know, like a three-dimensional Zoom call, but we can't do that. But what I think is fantastic is that the organisers didn't let a little global pandemic stop us, because across the industry and the non-profit world and the events world, a lot of people have said, no, too hard. But instead, we've said this is too important, and rightfully so. You know, among everything else that's happening, the global pandemic has shown us yet again how serious the issues that we deal with at CALDWays 2022 are. Because it's called communities, it's elderly Australians, it's Australians with disability, it's refugee and emerging communities that have suffered the worst of the pandemic. And of course, it's far from over. So simply put, our job here today is to fix all that, okay? So cancel your 4 o'clock. Now, also looking through the guest list for today, I can tell, because I've been around CALDWays for quite a while now, how broad we are getting. Yes, we have plenty of aged care providers, plenty of disability care providers, plenty of community service providers. We also have people who work in education, in local government, in, as we heard, men's sheds, PHNs, all manner of associations. A lot of peaks and industry associations have joined us because perhaps, just maybe, we're getting more aware of how important cultural and linguistic diversity is. Now, CALDWays, my goodness me, doesn't happen by accident. And a couple of people out of many to thank. I don't know if you've heard of them, the Australian Government's Department of Health. Anybody ring a bell? Good. Our thanks to them for their support. It's clearly quite a huge undertaking. Digital, face-to-face, it doesn't matter. A national conference, we're bringing in quality speakers and, of course, quality audience, needless to say. Also fundamental to our success is PICAC. Now, PICAC is an acronym, and of course, they are the cabal that keeps the price of petrol artificially high. I don't know why we're thanking them. Why are we thanking? Oh, that's OPEC. Now, PICAC is Partners in Culturally Appropriate Care. Now, that alliance, I think the name says a lot, but you're going to meet a couple of members of PICAC, Lisa Trebuzio and Nikki Rittenhausen. They are going to take over my gig and chair not one, but a couple of panel discussions talking about emerging communities. Now, if you're here, by the way, congratulations. You've passed the Tech IQ test, and we'll be sending you a certificate in the mail. One of the joys, of course, of this clever platform is that you can see me. Also, fun fact, I can see you, just so that you know. Also, I'll be tracking your movements throughout the weekend. Not true. But we do have, of course, the capacity to ask questions. One thing I'm really keen to not lose, because we're doing this digitally, is your ability to ask questions, make comments, God damn it, challenge authority. And if I'm not mistaken, on the bottom left of your screen is a little button called Live Q&A. I'd like you to use that early and often throughout the day to ask you questions and make your comments. And I will do my best to have our speakers address that. Don't let me just dominate the conversation. So let's just put that to the test. So if everyone can just locate that Live Q&A button and perhaps make a comment. Let me give you a little conversation starter. We are 2 days away from a federal election. I trust you're all aware of that, okay? If not, we need to talk. Cancel your 4 o'clock once again. We're 2 days away from voting in a federal election. We come from a myriad of sectors and concerns and businesses, if you like. But I want to know how you would rate our political leaders in their capacity to have dealt with your issues, dealt with your challenges. Has anybody issued a policy to make your life easier, to make you able to better serve your communities? How would you rate our politicians in regards to what you deal with every day, no matter what it is? So type that in to your Live Q&A box. Maybe a quick one-word response, it might be a few words, up to you. Now I'm just, oh, there we are. All right, interesting. Now, to officially get CALDWays 2022 underway, Ken Habak joins us. He is the chair of MCCI. Now, he is a man who wears many hats. Now, he's the chair and has been since, I believe, 2001 of the Multicultural Communities Council of Illawarra. He landed in this country from Lebanon back in 1970, and he hasn't quit contributing since. So much work as a treasurer, as a board member, as a chair and beyond, with faith-based group, ethnic-based groups, peak bodies, charities, all manner of organisations. And he was recognised for his contributions way back in 2010 with an Order of Australia medal. And you know that Ken's the real deal because despite now 12 years since his Order of Australia medal, he keeps on giving. Frankly, when I get my Order of Australia medal, I will literally leave the stage, drop the mic and head off to Mauritius. That's my plan anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, to officially get us underway, please make Ken very welcome.
Thank you, Brett. Good morning, all. Can I begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we are all today? I pay my respect to their elders, past, present, and future, and the elders from other communities who may be with us today. And thank you in advance, Aunty Joyce Bonner, Veronica Bird, and Dr. Shannon Luce for that wonderful welcome to country and for the localised Uluru Statement from the heart. At MCCI, we truly value the importance of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture and language as the oldest living culture in the world. We acknowledge the contributions that all Aboriginal people have made in the past and continue to make in a modern multicultural Australia. And we value your involvement and participation with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our 12th CALDWays Conference event, Multicultural Aged Care. It is with great pleasure and on behalf of the Multicultural Communities Council of Illawarra and PCAC and New South Wales and ACT that I welcome all the delegates from wherever they are. I would also like to welcome back our energetic MC Brett DeHoot, our local and international presenters and sponsors, Department of Health for their funding support, and our technology provider, Events Air, who have helped us to bring CALDWays into an online environment and everyone here today. The MCCI has proudly delivered high quality advocacy, services and support for multicultural communities for over 46 years. This year marked the 47th anniversary since our organisation was first formed, and we understand it is vital that we constantly reflect on our priorities and challenge ourselves to meet the emerging and changing needs of our community. We are a leadership voice for culturally and linguistically diverse communities, providing services that meet community needs, promote equity, harmony, social inclusion, and build community capacity. Our values are diversity, respect, integrity, empowerment, collaboration, and hope. We aim to empower, support, and advocate for the diverse communities and enrich the cultural experiences of the Illawarra and ACT regions. From very humble beginnings, MCCI now delivers over 57 individual service types for the community in the Illawarra and Canberra region. And this year, we have continued to grow our many services to our seniors, including in areas like in-home respite, home care packages, social support groups, carer support, youth, community visitors scheme, community transport, allied health, and men's shed. As a peak multicultural organisation in regional New South Wales and ACT, we like to think of MCCI as a big family. We have a dedicated team of over 120 staff and 200 volunteers who deliver services with compassion and dedication every day. We reach thousands of clients and community members with our services each year. And we have a wonderful partnership in the Illawarra and across New South Wales and the ACT with literally dozens of organisations and communities. We are so pleased that so many of you are able to join us for CALDWays Multicultural Aged Care Conference online today. Bringing communities together is what we at MCCI do best, and we have been doing it for over 46 years. The Partners in Culturally Appropriate Care, New South Wales and ACT initiatives provides a voice for CALD communities in an increasingly complex aged care system, whether it is co-designing a new multilingual resources for communities and consumers to make informed choices, advocating for change with national and state governments, delivering workshops and training in culturally appropriate care for providers, or helping communities to navigate the system. The PCAT National Alliance is all about action and has been walking the talk to help improve the lives of diverse Australians. I did like to welcome the other National PCAT Alliance partners who are joining us from around Australia today. The theme of this conference, Multicultural Aged Care, and as you all know that Australia is aging rapidly and becoming more culturally diverse nation. Understanding different cultures underpins our ability to be responsive to the diverse needs of the people we engage with every day and the quality of the services we provide to the multicultural communities we service. We have been advocating for action to support communities for 47 years, to promote equity, to encourage respect and harmony, to build a sense of belonging. These are the principle of a multicultural society, and these have been the foundations of our success as a nation. It is imperative we continue this work now more than ever. 1 in 2 Australians were born overseas, or their parents were. About 1 in 5 in Australia speaks a language other than English at home. As a nation, diversity is who we are, inclusive is what we need to be, or more specifically, what our communities and our seniors deserve. Friend, the last 2 years has been unlike any other in our lifetime, from rolling bushfires and flood and a global pandemic that has seriously disrupted our lives, our economy, our organisations, and our services. 2 years that many of us would like to forget, but it is also been 2 years of adaptations, innovation, and together we have all been finding new ways to adjust our services and support to seniors. I did like to acknowledge the incredible contributions of our health, care and aged care workers throughout a difficult 2 years, being on the front line, support seniors and families through some of the most uncertain and dangerous times at the height of the pandemic has been a challenge. All of us recognise how hard it has been and are enormously grateful for your expertise, compassion, and care to our most vulnerable people in the community. Can I also thank you for your passion and commitment, for it is at times like these that our communities and our clients and their families need us most, and they need us at our best. And being at our best means designing, delivering, and resourcing services that meet all our communities' needs, not just for those who speak English well or who know how to navigate government systems or who look like us or who are good advocates. Whether it is a first generation migrant senior who has lived in Australia for decades, or a recent arrived older person from a refugee background who is unfamiliar with Australia's aged care, health and social services, putting people at the centre is the solution to an inclusive society. Overcoming practical barriers to access services or language support, helping people make informed choices in their language, meeting a person's cultural, spiritual, and individual needs. On a personal note, I have been an advocate for change since almost the first day I arrived here in Australia from Lebanon in the 1970s. Back then, there was little in the way of support for new migrants like me. We had to find our own way, provide our own language support to each other, and overcome many obstacles. Much has changed in all those years, but some things haven't. The case for change continues, and it is up to all of us to be that change. The role of advocacy is as important as ever, but it is also about action. That is what today is ultimately about. Learning from each other to make the changes we want to see in the world. I hope you sincerely enjoy the conference program today with some amazing presenters. Before we kick off the proceedings, can I thank the wonderful PCAC team for designing a program as rich and as diverse as Multicultural Australia in 2022. Please join me in thanking the CEO of MCCI, Chris Lacey, the PCAC manager, Selene Akinci, and the PCAC team for their months of preparation to make this conference a great success that I know it promises to be. And can I thank all of you in advance for your participation and for taking the learnings today back to your organization and for making the changes you can make to support diversity, inclusion, and respect in your organization and in all our communities. So, with these introductory words, I declare the 2022 CALDWays Conference Multicultural Aged Care open. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. We should have mailed you a ribbon to cut to officially declare us open. And I only echo Ken's sentiments. Thank you for being here. We understand that now, more than any other time, really, there are more demands on you. And to devote a day with us, we appreciate it. But I think we all acknowledge that, let's face it, in a sense, I think the work that the people at CALDWays do is sort of social infrastructure. We hear a lot about hard, concrete infrastructure. This is the social infrastructure that keeps our community cohesive, or not. And we can see we're in a fracturing, challenging time. As Ken said, we might even like to forget the last 2 years, but what the people at CALDWays do is absolutely vital, and we do hope you take it back to your workplaces, and MCCI can help you do that. Thanks, Ken. Now,
Thank you, Brett.
Ken mentioned he's still around. My God, where is he? As Ken mentioned, heck of a program. It's big. Coming up, just a few selections. Dr. Norman Swan talking about our new COVID normal. Sarah Wilson will talk about successfully leading a multicultural workforce. So important when we're all trying to attract and retain quality staff. And we're talking, among many other things, about marketing to senior called communities with Professor Stephen D'Alessandro from the University of Tasmania. That's just a little selection, and the panels. And what else have I got? Oh, we're talking about engaging with aged care providers for interpretation services. No, I'll leave that for later because we're going to get on with the show. It is time for a welcome to country and to talk about the From the Heart statement, the Uluru Statement. Now, back in May 2017, I was sitting by the radio listening to the news when there was a report. It was early, if I recall correctly, a Sunday morning, about the Uluru Statement being decided upon at this event in the center of our gigantic country. And I didn't realize the significance. I noted the tone of the reporting, that this was the beginning of something big. I did not know how big. I also, as a cynical person who works with a lot of campaigns and prospective movements, didn't realize how significant that concept of truth and justice, reconciliation treaty would become, and how mainstream and successful this campaign would become. And I was watching Anthony Albanese yesterday at the National Press Club. Not only, of course, did he begin his presentation with an acknowledgement of country, he spoke, I've got to say, with real passion and some authority about the value of the statement and the value of a voice to Parliament. And it made me realise that report I heard way back in 2017 was indeed the beginning of something. Now, still, many of us, if not most of us, need to understand more about the statement. I know I do. And also potentially how we can utilise, do a localised version of it where we work or play or have influence. So we have not one, not two, but three presenters on that very topic. Dr. Sharon Louth will be joining us. She's a senior lecturer in education with the University of the Sunshine Coast, specialises in many issues around educational attainment and embedding Indigenous knowledge into the curriculum. Or is that curricula? Damn it, I've mixed up my plurals, which is something I specialise in. See, I'm human. Veronica Bird joins us, Butchulla Elder and GM of the Butchulla Aboriginal Corporation. And that part of the world includes what used to be called Fraser Island. She can tell you about that. And Aunty Joyce Bonner will join us, not just for a welcome to country, but to discuss, of course, the statement. Bushla elder, linguist, children's author, and performer extraordinaire in the world of singing. And I'm hoping she may regale us with a performance impromptu here this morning. No pressure, Aunty Joyce. So, to discuss how we can incorporate this into our own practice, into our own workplaces, please make our three presenters very welcome with a little round of applause in your home, even though no one can hear you.
Over to you, Callan Butsby, good morning, everyone. In my bachelor language, for this welcome, I would just like to acknowledge on behalf of all Apical ancestors throughout our beautiful traditional lands across the nations, where we see the creeks, our lakes, our rivers, our mountains, our oceans, and where connections still continue and are still shared through our stories. It is an honour to acknowledge each and every one of that piece of connection to our country we all call home. Nara, hello. Our voices continue to be heard throughout local communities which endeavour to respect the Uluru Statement from the heart respectfully. As we gather from our communities across this nation, we come together to undertake any services which are needed and how the healing process is maintained. With our ongoing engagement, our values and our different learning tools as grassroots peoples, nothing is more important than to incorporate our influential pathways, our guidance through our ancestral oral history while journeying on country. This amazing and powerful tool, coming and walking together as one, we gather, we walk, we stand, we support, a moment of truth-telling. Life's journey is a path by sharing with our caretakers of country, where engagement is productively done on a daily basis as traditional owners. Nara Nabang, Narawi Jaranjar, welcome. Any of the waters or our Mother Earth that surrounds our boundaries through our creeks, what I said before, our mountains and streams, and also our trees which embed a past to protect those pathways we share. A creation to capture stories and to present a leading and positive future for the next generation. As guests on local country, wherever this country is, there is abundant of knowledge, and as guidance, we journey as one on country with that connection. We as one, wherever we may journey through homelands, we as people, we continue to extend our hands of friendship and welcome you to country as visitors. We enjoy being part of the others throughout the day. May we be all blessed with good spirits as we stand or sit on country where we're walking or journeying together as one. Wherever you go, we tend to leave footprints. Birul Nagabli Yangu, God bless you all. Galangoyin, thank you. Naliyan is a little song, and it's about walking together on country as part of the Uluru Statement at a localised level. Naliyan, 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 Gebeyari, Barangaman. Naliyan, Gebeyari, Barangaman. Naliyan, Gebeyari, Barangaman. Naliyan, Naliyan. We all walk, Naliyan. We all walk, Naliyan. We all walk, Naliyan. Kalangoyin.
Thank you, Aunty Joy, as usual, for your warm welcome to country and acknowledgement of all our brothers and sisters and First Nations peoples across our beautiful country. My name's Veronica Bird, and I'll speak in relation to the Uluru Statement, but also in relation to how the local community here, in partnership with the University of Sunshine Coast, thought how the importance of the Uluru Statement could be implemented at a local level through a localised statement. So in relation to, I suppose, and just to put that in some context, in regards to historically, I suppose, our race relations between the First Nations people and the Australian community has been one that has not been a happy relationship, I suppose. But we certainly hope that there is a difference, certainly from 50 years ago or 150 years ago, and from colonisation, that there are certainly a lot of steps that have been taken to improve those relationships. So, and one of them, of course, is, I think we're all aware of, is the reconciliation process. So in regards to the dimensions of reconciliation in Australia, race relations, all Australians understand and value Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander and non-Indigenous cultures, rights and experiences, which results in stronger relationships based on trust and respect, and that are free of racism. Equality and equity. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples participate equally in a range of life opportunities, and the unique rights of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples are recognised and upheld. Institutional integrity. The active support of reconciliation by the nation's political, business and community structures. And I suppose this is a very important aspect of the Uluru Statement, and also a very important part of implementing a statement at a local level. Unity, which is all something that we all, strive to achieve, is an Australian society that values and recognises Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and heritage as a proud part of our shared national identity. Historical acceptance, and this goes to the heart, I suppose, of the Uluru Statement in relation to truth-telling and acknowledging and recognising the historical injustices, So all Australians understand and accept the wrongs of the past and their impact on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Australia makes amends for past policies and practices, ensure these wrongs are never repeated. So our next slide, which captures, of course, the wonderful the Uluru Statement. And I am honoured to say and blessed to say that I was one, I think, of two Butchulla people that had the opportunity to attend the Uluru Convention, which was held in May 2017. 5 years ago. So I was not only a delegate, I was also a facilitator. So it was a fairly, a big role I played in relation to holding sessions with the participants that attended in regards to seeking, I suppose, the drafting of the Uluru Statement, and I suppose the intention of what First Nations people of Australia wanted to see in regards to the outcome of the Uluru Convention. So as a result of that, my signature, I suppose, I'm very proud to say that my signature appears on the Uluru Statement, and something that I'm very proud of as a Butchulla woman, but certainly in relation to my family and the Wanamata family within the Butchulla Nation. So the three major elements, I think, we're all aware of in regards to the Uluru Convention, of course, is a voice to Parliament, a treaty, and sovereignty. So, so the government response to the Uluru Statement, and of course we heard some comments from our facilitator, our MC earlier, Brett, in regards to, the current campaign and the commitments that have been given in relation to a voice to Parliament. So it's around the federal government acknowledging the Uluru Statement, and of course the state up with the processes in relation to how a treaty can be achieved with First Nations people. But at a local level, it hasn't been defined. So I believe the Bachelor community and within the Bachelor Nation and the broader community, both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal, have certainly, shown an initiative in regards to developing a local statement, because what will happen at a national level. But in regards to progressing the Uluru Statement at a local level, it was about 3 years ago, we had our community meet and come up with a way of how we consult our community in regards to whether they would support a localised statement of commitment. So, reconciliation, I suppose, in Australia seeks to achieve equitable life choices for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples through improving access, opportunity and provision for all across key target areas, including health, education, employment, housing and justice, with a particular focus towards families and children. To date, there has been a much needed top-down approach to changing policies and processes to promote equity and inclusion in the aforementioned key target areas. But these gains have been slow to filter down in practice. So what we did was to identify a need for a local response. And what triggered this was, at that time, I worked as a community engagement officer with the Central Queensland Indigenous Development, CQID, who worked within the child safety space. And of course, we're all aware of the stolen generations and the impact that has had on First Nations people. But today, those statistics are still very high and unacceptable. And some say a repeat of the stolen generation. So this was an opportunity, I suppose, in regards to developing a localised statement of commitment in regards to how do we address and formalise partnerships and collaboration with agencies, both government and non-government, in regards to maybe reducing the gap, not only in relation to the child safety space, but in relation to all the other areas that I mentioned earlier: health, education, employment. So as a result of that, we then approached the University of Sunshine Coast in regards to assisting and supporting us in regards to how we may be able to develop that. So I'm going to now hand over to Dr. Sharon Louth, who will give you, an insight in regards to our methodology in regards to how we achieved our localised statement of commitment.
Thanks, Aunty V. So we began this with a phenomenological research design so that we could draw perspectives from First Nations people, that we could link this to the Uluru Statement of the Heart and what that meant for the local community, and so how those elements could link with the concepts of voice, treaty and truth that were part of the NAIDOC theme that year. And so the way that we approached this, we asked community, so that we held a local NAIDOC event, and we had we surveyed the people that were the community that were coming along to the NAIDOC event, and we had 183 respondents, and then we went through the data iteratively and developed an infographic where where the themes and the sub-themes emerged from the responses that community had given to the surveys. Then in phase 2, once we had these themes and sub-themes, in phase 2, we presented these themes to a focus group that comprised of between 12 and 15 elders and community representatives, where we iteratively went over the themes and sub-themes and how we applied that to the Uluru Statement, giving it a local context. And so these are the themes that developed from the phase 1 of the project that came from the result of community consultation through the surveys. And you can see the major themes come out of that was respect. And then followed by 4 other themes that were voice, truth, treaty, and unity. Within those, you can see there were further sub-themes, and these sub-themes, for example, if we look at voice, we talked about tradition and law and culture through education. These were linked. Culture through education was linked to knowledge and understanding through education, which also it was something that emerged through the truth theme. And so you can see throughout there's some bridges that are linked, that link all of these sub-themes together that are common elements across sub-themes. So once we had those, and we went back to our focus group, to our elders and community members, and we started to bring together the Uluru Statement of the Heart with the themes and sub-themes that had come through. And in the focus group, we rewrote the Butchulla Coast response to the Uluru Statement from the Heart. I know that's very small there, but we're happy to share that to you after the event. So I'll move it on to this next slide. And Aunty V, I believe Aunty Joyce is going to talk us through that. Okay.
So if you see the beautiful design there, the first one is about, this was done by one of our local Butchulla artists, Joel Barney, and he called it Whenever and Wherever We Meet. So through this artwork, there's 2 different dimensions of our Butchulla Dreamtime, Beryl and Berelden. So that's our female and male spirits of our creation story. So whenever and wherever. So part of that art piece is that when they meet, they're feeling a sign of protection through that spiritual connection, through the land and the sea. And you may see there the Milky Way and the constellation. That's where it's guided through the connecting, through that spiritual journey, whenever and wherever. These beautiful colours, it also incorporates and captures the evening image of an effect which provides a canopy through the stars within our dreaming. Buthu, which we call dolphin, is our Butchulla overall totem. And wherever we travel over Ngarawi for the sea waves, it is in with the Butchulla people who are welcomed on their journey and farewell wherever their journey ends. This is the protection through the Sandy Straits, Corrawinga. Yindinji is the overall blessings through our 4 sections, and these are guiding our spiritual journey through Butchulla law. This journey reflects our dreaming through our ancestors. The pathway and the message are part of whenever and wherever we may journey in our life. And due to the Dreamtime geometrical, Butchulla people captured their art through geometrical patterns, which ties our people by coming together whenever and wherever we meet. As part of this dreaming, it commences with our dreaming until the end of time. Through all these geometrical patterns, our protection is guiding spiritual, and it's a feeling which identifies the creation through our dreaming. The next slide is a basket, and it's done by Frances Blair, a Waka Waka woman. She's titled as Protector of Woven History. The basket that you see on the screen today reflects the journey of the unknown, a journey of old ways where fibres incorporate its vital use within Butler country. So these colours incorporated weave and consist of blue, which represents the ocean, and the cream and yellow to replicate the sand, just like the elements, the sands of time. The green is for the country, the land meets water within the lakes and rivers that flow healthier and clean, clear waterways. The red is enforced as a giver of the sun and fire, which is connected through sustainability. Black is for the people of the land. Grey is when its storms are about to create rain, which allows brown particles to relate the roots of the trees, which is the giver of life. The other important fibres are paper bark, a sort which is known for its natural uses. These colours that are also connected through the elements which come and go, like the wind and the rain, which can change all factors relating to the forces within. Look how each colour takes its role by interwoven fibres through weaving. This special basket will hold the art design of wherever and whenever walking together united. As I said before, our artist, Frances Blair, acknowledges and pays respects to the Butler elders and the communities and members who have supported her journey, and she's honoured to be part of this community. And her journey is a footprint where her people come with her as one by we're all learning and sharing together. And a special note from the artist is from Frances. She wants to share her cultural identity and connection has been strengthened with the support of Central Queensland Indigenous Development, and she's proud where her spiritual journey has bonded and continues as a reflection of Mother Earth, which has provided to her a wealth of knowledge by learning on country with the Butler custodians. The next slide is for Veronica.
So the importance of the development of the localised statement in regards, what we wanted to do is to honour the many First Nations people who participated in the Uluru Convention and to replicate, I suppose, the honour within the Uluru Statement. And that was by developing our own local stories, our own creation stories, our own dreaming stories in relation to our artwork and our statement. So what Aunty Joy just took you through was also a replica of how we did that. So just in regards to, and I know we're getting close to finishing time. So how is the localised statement relevant nationally? So it gives a voice to decision making, it acknowledging truth-telling from our past, present and emerging leaders within community, moving forward away from the torment of our powerlessness, empowerment, nurturing hope and optimism, importance of continued connection of kin and how this may be captured, importance of being on country, close to family and community, culturally appropriate care, include the local community in aged care planning, respect cultural traditions such as men's and women's business, access to bushland gardens, employ Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples to provide care, and buildings suited to cultural activities and ceremonies. So in the aged care sector, the Royal Commission findings identified more Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander workers to help people access care and work in aged care services, new aged care facilities and upgraded to existing facilities, support for health and disability services, including Aboriginal community-controlled organisations to expand into aged care, and empowering existing local Aboriginal organisations that are run by Aboriginal community and autonomy, and have a voice in regards to the participation of Aboriginal people in regards to their services and their needs. Better access to translation and interpreting services and translated information, support and scholarships for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander nursing within allied health and personal care students. Collaboration and co-design. The blueprint for aged care across all communities is regional service delivery models that promote integrated care, focus on maintaining connection to country, the importance of that, family and community, memorandums of understanding with all stakeholders, including Aboriginal organisation, educators and providers of aged care within allied health. Why is this so crucial? By 2023, all stolen generation survivors will be aged over 50 years and potentially eligible in need of aged care services. Importance of being aged, being cared for on country. Allow elders to remain close to home and community. Elders' strong desire to maintain cultural obligations to community and family. Improving health and well-being for all generations. And most importantly, elders are the keepers of our culture and the heart of our communities. So the future implications in relation to, I suppose, the Uluru Statement and certainly the localised statement is, of course, a whole of community approach where it has ownership with local contexts in regards to accessibility to services, accountability in regards to empowering local communities and change driven by local context. So becoming aware and recognising, I suppose, the many issues that we've identified during our presentation, especially historical, the historical acknowledgement in regards to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So thank you very much for on behalf of my Aunty Joy, and Dr. Sharon Lau, we'd like to just say thank you very much for the opportunity to present on, what we're very proud of in regards to our achievement with the development of our localised statement and the importance of that, being implemented here within our own community. So thank you.
Thank you.
So, Brett, I don't know whether we have time for questions, but yeah, I'll take my lead from you in relation to that.
Thank you to all of our presenters. That's A. B, I'm going to have to be a real taskmaster, and say we can't quite take live Q&A here, but people, audience, feel very free to use that live Q&A function to ask questions, and we will propose those questions to our speakers. So thank you so much for that presentation. It took 3 people to present it, Dr. Sharon Louth, Veronica Bird, and Aunty Joyce Bonner, and it was full of story and images and symbolism and song. And Aunty Joy, you've set a precedent. All of our presenters now, this is important for everyone waiting in the digital green room, will be expected to present a song. I will just play episodes of my podcast, which will be very exciting for everybody. And Aunty Joy, I'm so glad we could bully you into overcoming your natural disposition of shyness and introversion. That was absolutely beautiful. And there were comments in the chat too appreciating that. It was just wonderful. So thank you so much to all 3 of you. Our pleasure. We move ever onwards. This is showbiz, people. It's relentless. And we've got so many perspectives, so many people. Dr. Norman Swan coming up. We're going to meet emerging communities. But right now, I want to talk about leadership. It gets talked about a lot these days. And specifically, leadership for a multicultural workforce. It's got to be more than just morning teas, coloured lanyards, and a poster in the tea room. Not that there's anything wrong with any of that, but how can we really create a culture that is a great place to work at and volunteer at, regardless of one's background, regardless of one's identity? Well, Sarah Wilson is here from MCCI to talk about that. She's the Executive Operations Manager. She hails from the UK and joined MCCI in 2018 with a focus on quality improvement and human resources. It has worked because in 2021, MCCI was honoured to receive the Illawarra Business Excellence in Workplace Culture Award. And Sarah, I'm looking forward to your sharing of all of your competitive advantages with many of the people with which you compete who are watching you here today. So Sarah, I'll hand it over to you. Hopefully, if time permits, Q&A. If not, still put your questions and your comments in the live chat box. Sarah, I'll hand it over to you. Let's make Sarah very welcome.
Thanks so much, Brett. Can everyone hear me okay? Brett, if you can just nod if you can hear me. Excellent. Good to see you still hooting, Brett, at Hootville. And nice to see you back for another CALDWays.
I'll never stop.
And really wonderful to see so many people who registered for today and the interest in these topics. I'm not going to sing today. I think that would probably bring the numbers of participants back down quite considerably. But I would like to acknowledge firstly the traditional owners of the land who I am on today. I'm on the Dharawal land, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend those respects to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are watching today. And thank you as well for that wonderful presentation just now. MCCI is just embarking on its journey towards a reconciliation action plan. So I feel like I'm learning every day, and I can't wait to get to the fruition of our plan. But today I'm going to talk about why diversity is so important for MCCI. And whilst I am talking about multicultural diversity, a lot of what I say I think will go across many types of diversity. And I will try to leave some time for questions. So, see if I can get my tech working. Excellent. First, a bit about MCCI. MCCI's, well, it's been around since 1975, so quite a long time now. And it was started by community and for community. We actually held our first aged care forum in 1984. And I think, unfortunately, many of the things that were discussed then are probably ring true today. It was from that forum that we got our first little bit of grant funding from the Department of Immigration and Ethnic Affairs. And we haven't really looked back with the purpose and the vision. Although some of the words have changed, the intent has always remained the same. We have over 50 different member organisations, so mostly small community-based organisations representing particular communities, and our 8-member skills-based board also hail from local communities as well. But we maintain our community reach and consultation through a community reference group and through our members. So this is our strategic plan on a page, and you can see that people and culture is one of our 5 key pillars. Like most community organisations or community sector organisations or healthcare, without our people, we are nothing. We can't do the work we do. So it is vital that we have a great culture and great people so that we can do the work that we need to do. We call ourselves a family, the MCCI family, and I think just like most families, we have an array of amazing characters. In the last 4 or 5 years, we've grown pretty rapidly, and this has been a particular challenge in the last 2 years, where we haven't been able to get together so much, and the COVID's played a big role in how we've changed some of the way that we do things. So when I started in 2018, we had 40 staff, and now we have over 130. We have over 200 volunteers, and we now work over 2 jurisdictions, both in the Illawarra Shoalhaven and the ACT Queanbeyan. And leadership's played a really important role, I think, in how we've grown as an organisation. So why is diversity in our staff and volunteers such a strength? Really, it helps us connect deeply with the communities that we work with. We have truly local bicultural knowledge. For example, in the Illawarra, there are 2 Portuguese-speaking communities, one from Madeira and one from mainland Portugal. They both speak slightly different dialects, they both eat slightly different foods, and they have different traditions. And making sure that we understand that can help us deliver better services. It definitely builds a trust amongst the communities that we work with, and we deliver better services because of it. Also, I think it really helps us support clients transition, particularly in aged care, through from getting their first support at home, maybe through CHSP, going into a home care package, maybe into residential care if needed, or how we can support people to stay at home. Overall, it just increases the cultural competence of the organisation and enhances the knowledge base and capacity of other people. I'm sure many people have seen this picture before, but it isn't just hearsay that diversity is a good thing. McKinsey's research shows that ethnic diversity within a team is actually more valuable than gender diversity within a team. His research was obviously in for-profit organisations, but those who had a better diversity amongst their team, their profits and revenue grew faster than those who didn't. And it's pretty easy to see why, because diversity brings different perspectives. As leaders in organisations, I think it's really important that, first of all, we work hard to understand our own perspective and where we come from, so that we can uncover our hidden blind spots, and then make sure that we seek the input of others so that we can build a full picture. And I love this quote: "Diversity, the art of thinking independently together." So when we ensure that we get the diversity of perspectives, we can make far more informed decisions through better debate and more ideas. This quote from Malcolm Forbes, he was the American entrepreneur, but he's mostly known for the Forbes magazine. But there are challenges, and I just want to go through some of these with you and what our approach has been to try and meet some of these challenges. Perhaps the most obvious challenge is communication. When you have a diverse workforce, communication between team members can become very challenging. We have had some great misunderstandings here. I would love to tell you a very funny one about an incident which involved me giving up a particular brand of soft drink, but it's actually probably a little bit too rude for this forum. The volume of information, particularly over the last 2 years, has also been a real challenge, where perhaps guidelines or COVID information has been changing daily, weekly, and the information is quite complex. It varied across states and territories, and it varied between organisations. And just trying to get that information across to people in a way that they understood was very difficult. We also, in the community sector, tend to use a lot of jargon, and we love our acronyms. Our staff, what we found is people don't want to appear silly. So there's often that nodding and people saying they understand something because they don't want to appear as if they don't. But in fact, if we take the time to really listen and hear and observe, then that can help us get over some of those misunderstandings. And Australia has really complex systems. If you try and understand the SHADS award, which is the award that we work under, it is really complicated. And we have HR people who, have to interpret this every day, but trying to help people understand that when they come from a completely different environment and English is not their first or maybe even second language is very difficult. And then we also have a system that is heavily compliance driven. So the reporting requirements, instant reports, clocking in, clocking off from shifts, all of that complexity makes it quite difficult for people from less cultural backgrounds. So what do? We try to actively unword what we do. And I'll give you an example. Just yesterday, our CEO gave me a memo to look through, and I literally took out half the words from it to try and make it much more succinct, to use simpler language and shorter sentences to try and help understanding. We use a lot of different mediums to get our message across. We find that videos work really well, and instead of just a written newsletter, we have a little video at the top which we can either text people or send via email so they can watch and hear what's going on. I think time is one of the most important things, and time is one of those things that often people say they don't have. But by taking time with people, it's it really helps bridge the gap of understanding. And that might mean that instead of showing someone something once or explaining something once, you have to do it 2 or 3 times, but the benefit is there at the end. We use tools. So we have an internal communications framework, which sort of looks at overall how as an organisation we communicate internally and what tools we use for which purpose. There are some great tools out there that you can use now. There's obviously, we're all very good with video conferencing now, but there's things like Yammer that we use internally for our social media. There's voice to text functions. All those kind of things can be really helpful when people might not have the high levels of literacy and numeracy in English. And we provide alternatives. We have several members of staff who can't read or write in English well, but that doesn't stop us from valuing their skills and their attributes that they do bring to the organisation and finding alternative ways that we can work with them, whether that's them writing in their own, like writing an incident report, for example, in their own language, and then we translate it, or taking that report verbally over the phone rather than insisting that it should be written down. We have had cases where people have not understood why we do all these sort of workarounds for people. You know, it's this attitude of, well, they should be able to, you know, they've got this job, they should be able to do this. But actually, if you look at the person as a whole, it's valuing their skills that we need and then adapting the systems that we have and trying to remove some of those barriers. Expectations is a big one. Organisational expectations are huge, and I don't know if any of you have seen Fecca's report on Australia's bilingual and bicultural workforce, but if you haven't, it's a great read. It says, bilingual and bicultural workers should not be expected to know everything about particular linguistic and cultural communities, nor should they be subjected to unrealistic expectations around workloads. Unfortunately, for some bilingual and bicultural workers, these unrealistic and unworkable practices and expectations lead to stress and burnout. Now, we've definitely fallen into this trap in the past. The fact that you've got, for example, a Serbian-speaking person, they naturally become the go-to if you have someone on the phone who's speaking Serbian and they need help. What we've actually ended up doing, because it does become, it becomes a burden for the person there. It might not be within their role. They might have lots of other things to do. Why should they be expected at that point to drop everything just because they're the particular language or culture? So we've actually formalised that in our diversity policy to make it clear when we do use staff for those things and when we don't, and allowing staff to say no as well, and managing that expectation. I think the organisational, I talked about different perspectives before, and we have lots of different perspectives in the organisation. We can't have everyone's input into everything. So having really good decision-making processes that allow for those perspectives to be heard, but that decisions are made well, is also really important, so that although there is a topic, it doesn't mean that you can, too many ideas and too many thoughts and those kind of things can also slow down decision-making processes. Community expectation is also a big one. Most of our staff come from the communities that they're working with, and they might have personal relationships outside of work with many of the community members. There's then the temptation, both by the worker and the community member, that they don't see those professional boundaries. They don't see when the worker's on work and when the worker's off work. And they might be trying to call people outside of hours, expecting people to drop things off to their home. There's also the gossip within the community, which can cause issues. So we have to educate both the community and the worker about those boundaries and be quite strict about those things so that their lives don't intermingle too much. And a very simple example of that is making sure that if there's an expectation that in work, a worker is expected to contact community members, they have a work phone. They don't use their personal phone, just to provide that separation. So it's about being clear about the expectations that you have, whether it's about the community expectation or the expectation of translation and interpreting services that you expect a bilingual or bicultural worker to do, and setting really clear boundaries around that. We also need to understand unconscious biases that we have, and even though we're very multicultural, we still fall into that trap of unconscious bias. And the picture here is with one of our support workers and a client, and initially we had just assumed that our client would not want a male support worker, but in fact they get on like house on fire. So removing our own expectations and our own unconscious biases is really important, and keep on challenging yourself on that and really listening to both the staff and the clients about what they want and need. Different perspectives, different values and beliefs can provide challenges as well. We had a young intern once who, because of her beliefs, found it very difficult to work with a colleague who she thought was a lesbian. And we had to try and overcome that. We have had social group volunteers who don't feel accepted by the group they're working because they're of a different religion. And we have European or Anglo clients who actively say they do not want certain workers of certain cultural backgrounds. And we've had times where there's been a few people in the office speaking their own language together, and that has made another person feel uncomfortable. So we had to deal with all these issues. And I think the lesson is that just because we are a diverse organisation, it doesn't mean we're always culturally competent or aware all the time. In other words, we can't take it for granted. So at the top level, we have a human resource policy on discrimination, and we have an absolutely zero tolerance approach to racism, discrimination, bullying or harassment, as you would expect. But in practice, what else do we do? Cultural competence training is mandatory at induction for all staff and volunteers. We also then try to breed curiosity outside that formal training, so that it's a continuous information and stories and things that you can informally gather information from. And that can be everything from, we ran a social media campaign during Multicultural March, which told the stories of 25 of our female staff members and the countries they came from, their journey to Australia, what their first day in Australia was like, and why they stayed. And that kind of informal breeding of curiosity is really important. And we always encourage our staff to be curious and ask questions. I know sometimes there's a fear that you might insult someone by asking a question, but most people really enjoy talking about themselves and their stories and their background and their culture. So we really encourage that curiosity. And the other way that we practice this is through lots of celebrating. There is no way that you can work MCCI and not put on about 5 kilos in the first year, because there's lots of celebrations. Whether it's recent iftars or celebrating Orthodox Easter or Christmas celebrations, whatever it might be, we make sure that we celebrate together. And that in itself brings learning and understanding and cultural competence across the organisation. So celebrating together is very important for us, and one way that we think makes the MCCI a great place to work. So I said at the beginning that we really try and reflect our community in our staff, but this sort of brings out the assumption that we can match exactly what clients want. And we do get clients who say, I would like a Croatian-speaking female worker to come and give me a shower at 9 o'clock every day. It's not always possible. We would love for it to be possible, but it's not always possible. And that's just a reality that some of our ageing populations and some of the working populations don't match anymore. And some positions are really hard to recruit for, but we still do our best. So So what do we do? One thing I think we do very well is that we look at the person as a whole. So we don't just look at a traditional recruitment process. If you don't have X and you don't have Y, you're immediately struck off. We try and really value the person. I'll give you an example. There was a staff member who had been in Australia for about 6 months and had not had a single job interview. Her English wasn't amazing, but she could definitely communicate well. But her background was incredible. She'd actually been in charge of a hospital in the main city of the country she was from. She had amazing skills, and yet she'd applied for lots and lots of jobs and not got one single interview. What we looked at was the value of those skills. No, they weren't recognised in Australia in the same way. And yes, her English could do with improving, but the skills that she could bring to us vastly outweighed those things, and we can work around them. So we recognise and value everything that someone brings, whether that's in an Australian context or from overseas. And then we work our internal processes to validate skills, experience, whatever it might be. We actively train and support young people from the communities to try and encourage them into the workforce. And for example, we're running an individual support Cert 3 at the moment with a group, and that's something that's taking a lot of staff time and energy and work placements and all those kind of things. But the value that we will get from it in the future is much stronger. So we work with communities, not just in that way, but also using different recruitment techniques. And that might be working with church leaders. It might be going and speaking to particular groups and encouraging people to apply. And often it's people don't feel they have the skills or experience, or they don't understand the industry. So we have to break down all those barriers and then work with people to support them into our workforce, rather than that very traditional put an ad on Seek, go through a recruitment process, and it's a tick or a cross. We also really value the way that volunteers come into our workforce, and about 15% of our staff roughly started with us as a volunteer. And again, that's often because they might not have the work experience or something, the tick box things that Australia requires often, whether it's the qualification, the experience, the language. But by volunteering as a start, we can really build their skills, confidence, and they can see if they have an interest in their career, so that we can bring them on as a staff member, and then building career pathways. One thing that we've been able to do as we've grown as an organisation is offer people far more career pathways, so that we can keep people within the organisation and invest in them, rather than having to constantly look outside. All these things take time and take a lot of time. I'm not going to lie, it's an intentional thing that we do, but it does take time and resources, and you have to resource that. But it's definitely worth the investment, because you retain staff, you build connections with community, and you get people who are really, really committed to the organisation and what they're doing. I've just got a couple more and then we can go to questions. This is one of my all-time favourite pictures. I think it is so simple, but it really gets to the heart of what we want to do. So the idea of equality, I think, is now a bit passé, even though we still haven't got there in its entirety. And even equity, to me, there's still barriers in the way, and we're still trying to build things and fix things around the barriers. I'd like to think that as MCCI, we're looking towards liberation, where we're trying to remove those barriers and really celebrate every individual for who they are, the skills they bring. Obviously, that's not always possible, but that's where we're striving for. And I think some of the things we've done have helped with that. But we do have a lot more to do, and we're definitely not perfect. We still make those assumptions. We still probably need to do more effective consultation, and we still have barriers to recruitment, which we're trying to overcome. So I suppose the picture for us is, I think we've come a long way. we still need to work more, and we still need to be very intentional and not rest on our laurels. And also, as we grow bigger as an organisation, make sure that we continue to do all the little things as well that people really value. But I think so far we're going okay. Brett, I'll hand over to you for any questions if people want to ask me anything.
That presentation for giving us an oversight in how you do your voodoo that you do so well, and for leaving us time for Q&A. I've just got to get back to that image you showed just then, the famous 3-part image, equity, equality, and so on. And I have seen versions of that feature a third image where it's similar, but there are people seeking to pluck fruit from an apple tree, let's say. And the final slide, which purports to be the best outcome, is where people are assisted to be a little bit taller so they can reach an apple. And also there are struts and supports to the tree to make it straight or make it angle. What do you say about the things organizations can do so that there are structural, fundamental aspects of what they do and how they do it to create a more inclusive workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the fundamental stuff, you always start with that top level. It's the strategic intent and then the policy and process that goes behind that, and being able to create that good structure that everybody can understand and make sure that they're part of. Having that overarching structure, I think, is really important. Often policy and procedure is seen as something that sort of sits on the shelf. You write it, it sits on the shelf. But actually having that framework, the policy, the internal comms framework, and and again, it's about that intentional way of doing things, so that it's not chance, and you can keep referring back to things so that you measure how well you're doing. So yes, a structure is very important, but underneath that, it's how people then do those things day to day, and use their personality to bring those processes and those structures to life.
Sarah, there are a lot of organisations that would say they're doing all of this very, very well, maybe from the top. And then you talk to the workers or speak to the people who aren't working there, tried to work there or volunteer there or be a client there, and they don't see that, they don't feel that. How can we encourage our betters, our bosses, our elders to move from a presentational demonstrative sort of approach to this to actually making it work and making that change, that transition?
So I think the first thing you need to do is understand where you sit currently. So as you say, do your staff and volunteers actually think what you think? And we recently just did we do an annual staff survey. Lots of people do that. We just did another little pulse survey with all our care services team about some of those very key things. Do you feel valued? Do you feel like MCCI is an inclusive environment? Do you feel supported? Do you feel listened to? And the results were really very outstanding, 97% for and above for most things. So I think that's a really good starting point to say. But again, it's then not resting on your laurels. As a leadership team, we have a set of behaviours which we measure ourselves against as well. And that's about being trusted, being competent. And we measure ourselves against these 5 values that we have in a 360-degree review process, so that both our peers and the people that we manage input into how they see us as leaders in the organisation. If we're not walking the walk, then it's definitely something wrong within the organisation. So yes, we measure what we do, we get feedback on what we do as leaders, and then we intentionally make decisions about what we can do better.
Angela wants to know whether you make communications in other languages available every time.
Not every time. One of the things we do is we use tools that are available. So there's no way we can translate everything into 50 languages all the time. But there are other ways that we can help people understand. So a lot of our staff have apps on their phones that translate into their language of choice. So we might have a phone conversation with somebody, and then we'll text them in English. This is what we've discussed. They can translate that on their phone into their language so that we know that we're all on the same page.
Okay.
So I think there's lots of tools around that you can use now, which is excellent.
Olivera wants to know this is $1 billion question. How can you get your staff workers to actually care about the job rather than it just being a living?
You start with the values. So the very first question we ask at every interview we do or any discussion we have is about the person's value set, not about their skills or experience. If people, so, you know, for us, values around diversity, respect are so important to what we do every day. You can teach skills to anybody. You know, I'd say a lot of our best staff came to us with not so many skills, but the behaviours and the values that really set them apart, and they're wanting to support the community. If you start at those things and then teach the skills, you're far better than having someone who's got Cert 4s in aged care and, you know, 15 years of experience, but they might not have that value set. So that would always be my advice. And you can really tell, I think, pretty quickly within the first 5 minutes of an interview in general, whether someone does share those values and behaviours.
That's an interesting question, Sarah, because I suspect, and I'm a cynical person, forgive me, that some people might go into job interviews not expecting to talk about such issues, or maybe they're not so confident or eloquent or, you know, ready to present what seems to be quite a well-molded answer. You know, how do you make sure that you don't judge people just on their ability to answer a complex question in a smooth way?
So firstly, we don't make the questions complex. And then you can probe a little bit more. So often, you know, if someone's very nervous or doesn't speak English very well, they might just say things like, I like making people happy. So they don't need to say the buzzwords necessarily, but you can tell about how they approach something, what else they've been doing in the community, and how they speak, about their warmth and their generosity, and particularly about whether they talk about multiculturalism, not in necessarily that word, but working with different people and the joy that they get out of working with different people or with older people. So I think it's looking for those keywords, you don't need a well-rounded thesis on something.
Yeah. And we are hearing so much about the labour shortage and the jobs market at the moment being one that's good for people seeking work. Is this an opportunity for some employers to think more broadly and to employ people or give opportunities to people they might have previously said no to?
It's a really difficult question. Labour workforce shortages, particularly during COVID, has been pretty horrific, I think, across the board. I don't know if I can speak for everybody, but January, February time was horrendous, with the amount of people off work in isolation having COVID. But the longer term labour shortages, in terms of that growth of population, I don't think it's just an individual organisational issue. This is a countrywide issue and an issue for the industry as a whole to get together and work through. Some of the things that will make it much more attractive is if the Fair Work case goes through and there's an increase in wages. It's still, you know, if you think of the work that we're asking our frontline staff to do, under the Shads Award, if a part-timer, it's something like just under $23 an hour. Now, people can pack shelves at a supermarket for more money than that. So I think in terms of, it's interesting over COVID, I had hoped that as a country we would see which jobs and what value is in a job. And I think for a moment we did, but we've sort of gone back to our old ways of thinking again. And we really need to still think about the things. The people that were still working every day were the healthcare workers, the aged care workers, the cleaners, the caterers, the politicians, and they could sit in their ivory towers, they could work from home. It was our staff who were going out there every day and delivering services to people who need it. As a society, if we don't start valuing that, then we're going to be in for a major shock in 10 to 15 years' time.
Aged care certainly got.
Organisations can do their own thing, but I think as a society we need to do so much more.
Sarah, thank you for the work you do, and thank you for your presentation this morning. I know it's been very well received. We had more questions, we just don't have more time to answer them, but thank you so much.
Thanks, Brett.